Of Mice and Men, Chapter 3. Although there was evening brightness showing through the windows of the bunkhouse, inside it was dusk. Through the open door came the thuds and occasional clangs of a horseshoe game, and now and then the sounds of voices raised in approval or derision. Slim and George came into the darkening bunkhouse together. Slim reached up over the card table and turned on the tin-shaded electric light. Instantly the table was brilliant with light, and in the cone of the shade threw its brightness straight downward, leaving the corners of the bunkhouse still in dusk. Slim sat down on a box, and George took his place opposite.
"It wasn't nothing," said Slim. "I would have had to drown most of 'em anyways. No need to thank me about that."
George said, "It wasn't much to you, maybe, but it was a heck of a lot to him. Jesus Christ, I don't know how we're going to get him to sleep in here. He'll want to sleep right out in the barn with them. We'll have trouble keeping him from getting right in the box with them pups."
"It wasn't nothing," Slim repeated. "Say, you sure was right about him. Maybe he ain't bright, but I never seen such a worker. He darn near killed his partner bucking barley. There ain't nobody can keep up with him. God Almighty, I never seen such a strong guy."
George spoke proudly. "Just tell Lenny what to do, and he'll do it if it don't take no figuring. He can't think of nothing to do himself, but he sure can take orders." There was a clang of horseshoe on iron stake outside, and a little cheer of voices. Slim moved back slightly so the light was not on his face.
"Funny how you and him string along together."
It was Slim's calm invitation to confidence. "What's funny about it?" George demanded defensively.
"Oh, I don't know. Hardly none of these guys ever travel together. I hardly never seen two guys travel together. You know how the hands are. They just come in and get their bunk and work a month, and then they quit and go out alone. Never seem to give a darn about nobody. Just seems kind of funny a cuckoo like him and a smart little guy like you traveling together."
"He ain't no cuckoo," said George. "He's dumb as heck, but he ain't crazy. And I ain't so bright neither, or I wouldn't be bucking barley for my 50 and found. If I was bright, if I was even a little bit smart, I'd have my own little place, and I'd be bringing in my own crops, instead of doing all the work and not getting what comes up out of the ground." George fell silent. He wanted to talk. Slim neither encouraged nor discouraged him. He just sat back, quiet and receptive. "It ain't so funny, him and me going around together," George said at last. "Him and me were both born in Auburn. I knowed his Aunt Clara. She took him when she was a baby and raised him up. When his Aunt Clara died, Lenny just come along with me out working. Got kind of used to each other after a little while." Said Slim. George looked over at Slim and saw the calm, godlike eyes fastened on him. "Funny," said George. "I used to have a heck of a lot of fun with him. Used to play jokes on him, 'cause he was too dumb to take care of himself. But he was too dumb even to know he had a joke played on him. I had fun. Made me seem god-darn smart alongside of him. Why, he'd do any darn thing I told him. If I told him to walk over a cliff, over he'd go. There wasn't so much darn fun after a while. He never got mad about it neither. I beat the heck out of him, and he could bust every bone in my body just with his hands, but he never lifted a finger against me." George's voice was taking on the tone of confession. "Tell you what made me stop that. One day, a bunch of guys was standing around up on the Sacramento River. I was feeling pretty smart. I turned to Lenny and say, 'Jump in.' And he jumps. Couldn't swim a stroke. He darn near drowned before we could get him. He was so darn nice to me for pulling him out. Clean forgot I told him to jump in. Well, I ain't done nothing like that no more." Compare how George used to treat Lenny to how he treats him now. Why does George no longer play jokes on Lenny? How did this experience change him as a person?
"He's a nice fella," said Slim. "Guy don't need no sense to be a nice fella.
Seems to me sometimes it just works the other way around. Take a real smart guy, and he ain't hardly ever a nice fella. George stacked the scattered cards and began to lay out his solitaire hand. The shoes thudded on the ground outside. At the windows, the light of the evening still made the window squares bright. "I ain't got no people," George said. "I seen the guys that go around on the ranches alone. That ain't no good. They don't have no fun. After a long time, they get mean. They get wanting to fight all the time."
"Yeah, they get mean," Slim agreed. "They get so they don't want to talk to nobody."
"'Course Lenny's a goddarn nuisance most of the time," said George. "But you get used to going around with a guy, and you can't get rid of him."
"He ain't mean," said Slim.
"I can see Lenny ain't a bit mean." "'Course he ain't mean. But he gets into trouble all the time because he's so goddarn dumb. Like what happened in He stopped in the middle of turning over a card. He looked alarmed and peered over at Slim. "You wouldn't tell nobody?"
"What'd he do in Weed?"
Slim asked calmly. "You wouldn't tell?" "No, of course you wouldn't."
"What'd he do in Weed?" Slim asked again.
"Well, he seen this girl in a red dress. Dumb jerk like he is, he wants to touch everything he likes. Just wants to feel it. So he reaches out to feel this red dress, and the girl lets out a squawk. And that gets Lenny all mixed up, and he holds on 'cause that's the only thing he can think to do. Well, this girl squawks and squawks. I was just a little bit off, and I heard all the yelling. So I comes running, and by the time Lenny's so scared, all he can think to do is just hold on. I socked him over the head with a fence picket to make him let go. He was so scared he couldn't let go of the dress. And he's so goddarn strong, you know." Slim's eyes were level and unwinking. He nodded very slowly.
"So, what happens?"
George carefully built his line of solitaire cards. "Well, that girl rabbits and then tells the law that she's been raped. The guys in Weed start a party out to lynch Lenny. So we sit in an irrigation ditch underwater all the rest of that day. Gotten our heads sticking out of water and up and under the grass that sticks out from the side of the ditch. And that night, we scrammed out of there." Slim sat in silence for a moment.
"Didn't hurt that girl none, huh?"
he asked finally. "Heck no. He just scared her. I'd be scared too if he grabbed me. But he never hurt her. He just wanted to touch that red dress, like he wants to pet them pups all the time."
"He ain't mean," said Slim. "I can tell a mean guy a mile off."
"'Course he ain't. He'll do any darn thing When we compare the characters of Slim and George, what is the same about them? What about Slim's character makes George trust him? Lenny came in through the door. He wore his blue denim coat over his shoulders like a cape, and he watched hunched way over. "Hi, Lenny," said George. "How you like the pup now?" Lenny said breathlessly. "He's brown and white, just like I wanted." He went directly to his bunk and lay down and turned his face to the wall and drew up his knees. George put down his cards very deliberately. "Lenny," he said sharply. Lenny twisted his neck and looked over his shoulder. "Huh? What you want, George?" "I told you couldn't bring that pup in here." "What pup, George? I ain't got no pup." George went quickly to him, grabbed him by the shoulder, and rolled him over. He reached down and picked the tiny puppy from where Lenny had been concealing it against his stomach. Lenny sat up quickly. "Give him to me, George," George said. "You get right up and take this pup back to the nest. He's got to sleep with his mother. You want to kill him? Just born last night, and you take him out of the nest. You take him back, or I'll tell Slim not to let you have him." Lenny held his hands out pleadingly. "Give him to me, George. I'll take 'em back. I didn't mean no harm, George. Honest, I didn't. I just wanted to pet 'em a little. George handed the pup to him. All right. You get him back there quick, and don't you take him out no more. You'll kill him the first thing you know. Lenny fairly scuttled out of the room. Slim had not moved. His calm eyes followed Lenny out the door. Jesus, he said. He's just like a kid, ain't he? Sure, he's just like a kid. There ain't no more harm in him than a kid, neither. Except he's so strong. I bet he won't come in here to sleep tonight. He'd sleep right outside of that box in the barn. Well, let him. He ain't doing no harm out there. It was almost dark outside now. Old Candy, the swamper, came in and went to his bunk, and behind him struggled his old dog.
Hello, Slim. Hello, George. Didn't either of you play horseshoes?
I don't like to play every night, said Slim. Candy went on.
Either you guys got a slug of whiskey? I got a good egg.
I ain't, said Slim. I'd drink 'em myself if I had, and I ain't got a good egg neither.
Got a bad good egg, said Candy. Them goddamn turnips give it to me. I knowed they was going to before I ever eat 'em.
The thick-bodied Carlson came in and out of the darkening yard. He walked to the other end of the bunkhouse and turned on the second shaded light. Darker as heck in here, he said. Jesus, how that African-American can pitch shoes.
He's plenty good, said Slim.
Darn right he is, said Carlson. He don't give nobody else a chance to win. He stopped and sniffed the air, and still sniffing, looked down at his old dog. God almighty, that dog stinks. Get him out of here, Candy. I don't know nothing that stinks as bad as an old dog. You gotta get him out. Candy rolled to the edge of his bunk. He reached over and patted the ancient dog, and he apologized.
I've been around him so much, I never notice how much he stinks.
Well, I can't stand him in here, said Carlson. That stink hangs around even after he's gone. He walked over with his heavy-legged stride and looked down at the dog. Got no teeth, he said. He's all stiff with rheumatism. He ain't no good to you, Candy, and he ain't no good to himself. Why don't you shoot him, Candy? The old man squirmed uncomfortably.
Well, the heck. I've had him so long. Had him since he was a pup. I herded sheep with him.
He said proudly.
You wouldn't think it to look at him now, but he was the best darn sheepdog I ever seen.
George said, I seen a guy in Weed that had an Arendelle that could herd sheep. Learned it from the other dogs. Carlson was not to be put off. Look, Candy, this old dog just suffers himself all the time. If you was to take him out and shoot him right in the back of the head, he leaned over and pointed, right there, why, he'd never know what hit him. Candy looked about unhappily. No, he said softly. No, I couldn't do that. I had him too long. He don't have no fun, Carlson insisted. And he stinks to beat heck. Tell you what, I'll shoot him for you. Then it won't be you that does it. Candy threw his legs off his bunk. He scratched the white stubble whiskers on his cheek nervously. I'm so used to him, he said softly. I had him from a pup. Well, you ain't been kind to keep him alive, said Carlson. Look, Slim's dog got a litter right now. I bet Slim would give you one of those pups to raise up, wouldn't you, Slim? The Skinner had been studying the old dog with his calm eyes.
Yeah, he said. You can have a pup if you want to.
He seemed to shake himself free for speech.
Carl's right, Candy. That dog ain't no good to himself. I wish somebody'd shoot me if I get old and cripple.
Candy looked helplessly at him, for Slim's opinions were law. Maybe you'd hurt him, he suggested. I don't mind taking care of him. Carlson said, The way I'd shoot him, he wouldn't feel nothing. I'd put the gun right there. He pointed with his toe. Right back of the head. He wouldn't even quiver.